The case of Bonnie Craig. Bonnie Craig was born in Calgary, Canada, on March 30th, 1976. Her biological father played a minimal role in her upbringing, as Bonnie and her older brother Jason were lovingly raised by their stepfather, Gary Campbell. Gary treated Bonnie and Jason as his own children. When Bonnie was 5 years old, Gary and her mother Karen had a son named Adam. 2 years later, a younger sister named Samantha was born, who quickly became Bonnie's close companion. Bonnie loved dressing Samantha in fairy tale costumes and teaching her everything Bonnie had learned. Gary, the head of the family, worked in the oil industry, which required frequent moves to different locations. As a result, Bonnie became accustomed to changing schools, having attended 6 elementary schools and 2 high schools, which taught her to adapt to new environments and make friends easily. During her childhood, Bonnie lived in a variety of climates, from sunny California with its outdoor pool to snowy Anchorage, West Texas, and finally back to the scenic landscapes of Alaska. However, Karen and Gary's sudden divorce marked a major change for the children. Samantha and Adam began alternating between their parents' homes. Bonnie focused on her studies and numerous extracurricular activities, including swimming, diving, horseback riding, writing poetry, and playing the violin and viola in the school orchestra. However, life continued to present her with unexpected challenges. While coping with her parents' divorce, tragedy struck when her best friend died in a drunk driving accident, profoundly affecting Bonnie's outlook on life. She vowed to abstain from drinking and driving and became so concerned about the dangers of driving that she decided not to obtain a driver's license for fear of an accident. Instead, she chose to walk or use public transportation to raise awareness about the risks of drunk driving. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. After graduating from high school, Bonnie moved to Anchorage to study psychology at the University of Alaska. At the same time, her boyfriend, Cameron Miyazaki, was studying architecture at the University of California at Berkeley. Despite the physical distance, they stayed in contact by phone and exchanged emails regularly. Bonnie's home life became crowded as her mother began a new relationship with Jim Foster, who brought 3 children with him. Seeking more independence, Bonnie decided to move in with her stepfather. The move was strategic, as it placed her only a 15-minute drive from college. Honoring her vow, she took public transportation to class 3 times a week, enjoying brisk walks to the bus stop under the clear blue Alaskan sky. She also balanced her studies with a part-time job at Sam's Club. Her life was filled with purpose, ideals, and passion. On the morning of September 28, 1994, Bonnie left her stepfather's house and headed to the bus stop for college classes. That day, a student at the University of Anchorage was taking scenic photos on a hiking trail in Chugach State Park, about 15 miles from Bonnie's house. The park was particularly beautiful at this time of year due to Alaska's mild temperatures, long daylight hours, and stunning scenery. As the student adjusted her camera lens, she noticed something unusual in the water near the cliff's edge, a striking blue object. Upon closer inspection, she discovered a heartbreaking sight, a woman floating face down in shallow water. She immediately called the police to report the incident. The McHugh Creek section is difficult to access except from the cliff top or by following the stream for miles, suggesting a tragic accident. Initially, police believed the victim may have slipped and fallen from the cliff, resulting in her death. This accidental theory was the first conclusion investigators reached, as it was thought that the victim, drawn by the peaceful atmosphere of the park, may have lost her balance and fallen tragically. The body was then transferred to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of injuries and assist in identifying the victim. The autopsy revealed that the young woman had died from drowning and severe head trauma, likely caused by a fall from the cliff. A unique class ring, often worn by graduating students, helped police identify the victim as Bonnie Craig. To confirm their findings, police contacted Bonnie's family. Karen, Bonnie's mother, was on a short trip to a coastal town to attend a relative's wedding with her husband, Jim, who had spent his childhood there. The trip was significant because Karen would meet Jim's parents for the first time. Karen was enjoying herself, laughing and sharing stories with her future in-laws. But she had no idea that tragedy had struck her beloved daughter, Bonnie. A knock on the cruise ship's door at 3 a.m. shattered the peaceful atmosphere. When confronted with the heartbreaking news, Karen initially refused to believe it, thinking it was a cruel joke. It was unimaginable that her responsible daughter would be alone in the park instead of attending college classes. The news of Bonnie's death from the police left Karen devastated. Karen had spent the past 3 years working undercover for the Anchorage Police Department. After graduating from the police academy, she had specialized in drug trafficking cases. Her colleagues deeply respected her problem-solving skills, which she had developed over years of dedication to her work. However, Karen's dedication extended beyond her job to her family. Her undercover work often required a difficult balance between her professional and personal roles. Karen instinctively questioned the initial ruling that Bonnie's death was an accident, and her priority was to hand the investigation over to her own department. Believing there was more to her daughter's tragic death, she requested detailed information from the police about the circumstances surrounding the incident, including whether Bonnie had shown any signs of sexual violence. The police noted that Bonnie had been found fully clothed, but Karen knew a more thorough investigation was necessary. Her daughter, Bonnie, had been responsible and trustworthy, always keeping her promises, and she did not even have a driver's license. It was therefore difficult for Karen to understand why Bonnie would be alone and miles from home during school hours. What further confused Karen was that Bonnie's personal belongings were not at the scene, which made her suspect that the police might be inclined to rush to classify the incident as an unfortunate accident. Karen was determined to continue her search for the truth. She returned to Alaska on the earliest flight possible to formally identify the body, holding on to the hope that the deceased might not be her daughter, Bonnie. Upon entering the morgue, she hesitantly approached the ambulance where the body was covered with a white sheet. When she pulled the sheet away and saw her daughter's face, her worst fears were confirmed. It was indeed her daughter, Bonnie, resting in eternal peace. Karen's instincts as both a grieving mother and a law enforcement officer told her that her daughter's death was more than just an accident. As she held Bonnie's hand, she saw bruises and swelling on her knuckles, which she assumed were defensive wounds. Karen wanted the police to document this evidence, believing it could be crucial in finding clues before her daughter was buried. The police were skeptical, thinking the injuries could have been caused by a fall. Despite the police's skepticism, Karen decided to take a different approach in her pursuit of justice. She reached out to her media contacts. The shocking news of a young college student's death in a creek quickly attracted widespread attention from local media. Karen also attempted to contact her superiors, hoping for assistance as precious time was running out, but she was told the matter was beyond their scope. The next day, Karen, Jim, Gary, Jason, Adam, and Samantha gathered at the funeral home to say their final goodbyes to Bonnie. It was difficult for her siblings to see her lying motionless, knowing how full of life she had once been. As they prepared for the funeral, they were tasked with choosing a casket. Karen, wanting to preserve any potential evidence, decided on a stone crypt, believing it might need to be reopened in the future if new information emerged. Although she attempted to gain attention and assistance from the media, her efforts seemed to complicate matters rather than aid in uncovering the truth. Karen was summoned to the police station and instructed not to publicly call the incident a crime so as not to affect the ongoing investigation. The police were carefully reviewing all possible leads and were considering Gary Campbell, Bonnie's stepfather, as a potential suspect. They suspected him because his alibi did not fully align, and there were reports of conflict between him and Bonnie. This information left Karen stunned, as she found it difficult to believe that Gary, who had always been a loving father to Bonnie, could be involved in such a terrible act. The situation worsened when Karen went to Gary's house to collect her daughter's belongings, only to find Bonnie's room locked. An argument erupted when Gary accused Karen of stealing a photo of Bonnie that she had taken without his permission. He insisted on keeping the memories of the daughter he cherished. Bonnie's death had a profound impact on her younger sister, Samantha, who was only 12 when the tragedy occurred. Samantha began struggling in school and found it difficult to concentrate at home. She often shared everything with Bonnie and felt completely lost without her guidance. The confusion surrounding her sister's death even caused Samantha to doubt her own trust in her father, leaving her uncertain about what was right. One evening, as Gary was tucking her in for bed, fear filled her eyes as she asked if he had been responsible for Bonnie's death. Gary was surprised and hurt by her question. He regained his composure and gently reassured Samantha that he would never harm her sister. His comforting words helped her ease her fears and restore her trust in him. After Bonnie's death, the police spoke to Adam and Samantha, both of whom confirmed that their father, Gary, had been home on the day Bonnie died, only leaving for work after Bonnie had departed. His alibi was corroborated by co-workers and supervisors, clearing any doubts about his involvement. An autopsy revealed that Bonnie had died several hours before her body was discovered. The cause of death was determined to be drowning, and she had also suffered severe head injuries, which may have been caused by falling from a cliff or being struck by a heavy object. The police launched a thorough investigation into Bonnie's death, which had initially been ruled an accident at the park. A police officer carefully searched the area near the cliff and found a leaf with a drop of Bonnie's blood a few feet from the cliff's edge. This discovery prompted further investigation into the presence of blood. If her injuries had been caused by a fall, this finding led the police to consider that Bonnie's fall may not have been accidental, but rather the result of someone else's actions. The police were aware that solving the case would be difficult and required cautious handling. Therefore, they chose not to notify the relevant parties at that time. Family members suspected that a crime had occurred, and the police deliberately withheld all information about the case. To avoid alerting potential perpetrators, they could not ignore the possibility that the killer might be someone close to Bonnie. Karen's sudden media release became a hindrance to the investigation. Bonnie Craig's funeral was attended by loved ones, including friends, family, and acquaintances, as well as her boyfriend, who had traveled from California to say goodbye. He was deeply saddened, as he could never have imagined such a tragic ending to their story. Even Bonnie's biological father, Gordon Craig, who had not played an active role in her life, attended the funeral to pay his respects and say goodbye to her. The funeral was held at a church that Bonnie had occasionally visited. It was a moment for everyone who knew Bonnie to pay their final respects, share fond memories of her, and support one another during this difficult time. A week after Bonnie's death, Karen decided to investigate her daughter's case herself, as the police had not provided any updates. Karen carefully traced Bonnie's pre-dawn route from Gary's house to try to understand what might have been on her daughter's mind that morning. She wanted to put herself in Bonnie's shoes and imagine what details might have captured her attention. As Karen walked along the path her daughter had taken many times that week, she began to realize how dangerous it was. The path was flanked by tall trees that loomed in the shadows, concealing potential dangers. Karen wondered why Bonnie had not asked her stepfather to drive her to the bus stop, and why she had never mentioned the hazardous path she walked every day. She later learned that Bonnie felt the same way, not wanting to worry anyone and wanting to be independent. Bonnie had been prepared and carried pepper spray, believing she could protect herself if necessary. Karen had also taught Bonnie from a young age never to hitchhike with strangers, believing that her daughter would only hitchhike with someone she knew and trusted. When the walk yielded no clues, Karen drove around the area, searching for any of Bonnie's belongings that might provide evidence for the investigation. Unfortunately, she found nothing. In January 1995, Karen contacted the sergeant in charge of Bonnie's case directly to ask whether her daughter had been sexually assaulted. The sergeant was compelled to tell her the truth. Karen was permitted to review the results of Bonnie's autopsy on the condition that they remained strictly confidential. The autopsy revealed that Bonnie's body had been fully clothed, but she had sustained injuries to her genitals, and male DNA was recovered from a swab. This information had to be kept confidential because the source of the DNA was still unknown. During the investigation, all men associated with Bonnie were questioned, and their DNA samples were collected. However, no matches were found at that time. Although several witnesses saw Bonnie walking to the bus stop that morning, none saw her actually board the bus. The question of how Bonnie ended up in Chugach Park, more than 10 miles from her home, remained unanswered. Investigators speculated that she may have been attacked while walking alone in the dark. A few months after Bonnie's death, Jim's family invited Jim and Karen on a week-long cruise, hoping that a change of scenery would help them heal. Karen was hesitant at first, as the cruise reminded her of her daughter's tragic death. However, she realized that the trip could provide a temporary escape from her grief. For the past year, she had been consumed by sorrow, the investigation, and the waiting for news of her daughter. She saw the trip as an opportunity to momentarily escape her worries. Karen, Jim, Jim's brother Ken, and Ken's wife spent the week enjoying the sights and sounds of the ocean. Upon their return to the dock, they received word from the Coast Guard that their family had attempted to contact them regarding an emergency. Karen immediately feared it might involve one of her children. However, the bad news this time concerned Jim and Ken's father, who had suddenly died of a heart attack. The news was especially shocking because the family had just celebrated their father's 63rd birthday, during which he had seemed healthy and happy. Unfortunately, this was the second time the family had received heartbreaking news after returning from a boat trip. Karen's remaining children struggled to cope with the loss of their sister Bonnie and the impact of their mother's relentless pursuit of justice. As the investigation into Bonnie's death became the central focus, the children often felt neglected and deprived of the care they needed. Karen wrestled with the moral dilemma of balancing her love for her children with her commitment to seeking justice for Bonnie's death, despite the possibility that the case might never be solved. Over time, Karen's children grew up and started families of their own, bringing her immense joy as a grandmother. Amid these life changes, her youngest son, Adam, underwent a cornea transplant to improve his increasingly poor eyesight, which unfortunately resulted in blindness in one eye. Karen's personal life underwent many changes. She married Jim, but their marriage ended in divorce after 3 years. The family faced further difficult times, including the loss of Karen's brother and mother, both of whom battled cancer. Throughout the ups and downs, the sadness and grief stemming from Bonnie's death continued to have a lasting impact on Karen's life. The family endured a great deal of emotional pain, including sleepless nights, anxiety, anger, and deep depression. On January 5, 2007, 12 years after Bonnie's death, Karen embarked on a round-the-world trip with a friend. While staying on an island in the Philippines, Karen received an unexpected email from an unknown sender with the subject line, Bonnie. The sudden message made her heart race, as the case, which had remained unsolved for years, had recently gained new momentum. A new team of investigators, using an advanced database, retested the DNA evidence found on Bonnie. Their efforts led to a breakthrough. They matched the DNA to a man serving a sentence in New Hampshire for a series of armed robberies. Kenneth Dion was born in 1969. He was 25 years old when Bonnie died. He only became a suspect in the case after his DNA was added to the system in late 2006. With a background in martial arts and a history of competition, Kenneth served in the United States Army. However, his service was cut short due to drug use. Kenneth had a particular habit of carrying unusual items in his car, including a 3-pronged stick and nunchucks. Kenneth Dion had only recently been released from prison after a brief period of freedom in May 2007. Kenneth was charged with assault and murder in connection with Bonnie's death. According to the indictment, Kenneth attacked Bonnie as she walked to the bus stop, using weapons and martial arts to sexually assault her. He then dumped her body off a cliff in the park to conceal evidence of his crimes. As more information about Kenneth became available, it was discovered that he had a lengthy criminal record with 18 convictions, including 10 misdemeanors and 8 felonies. Had Kenneth's DNA been in the database sooner, the case might have been solved much earlier. Kenneth Dion was sentenced to 124 years in prison on October 31, 2011, 17 years after the incident. He received 99 years for murder and 25 years for assault, and is eligible for parole at age 80. Moving on to the next case. Brandon Gonzalez. 22-year-old Brandon Gonzalez lived with his small family in Goregaon West. Now, Goregaon West was becoming a crowded suburb in Mumbai City. Besides Gonzalez, his family only consisted of his mother and older sister. On December 19, 2016, like every day, Gonzalez went for a morning walk from his home to Ari Colony. Usually, he would return home within an hour after his stroll, but today he did not come back until afternoon. Concerned, Gonzalez's mother Seema and older sister, Kashma, first called his friends because he had left his phone at home that day. Despite contacting some friends, they could not find any information about Gonzalez. Now, the sun had already set, and night was slowly falling. Worried about their son, Seema took her daughter and went to the nearby Dindoshi police station to file a missing person report. Now, besides Gonzalez's family and friends, the police were also trying to find him. Meanwhile, the Dindoshi police station had distributed Gonzalez's photo to nearby police stations as well. However, amidst this, around 12:30 in the afternoon on December 22nd, a call came to the nearby Ari police station. The caller reported that he had just seen a headless body. Upon hearing this, the police promptly rushed to the reported location in Ari Colony. Upon arrival, the scene astonished them. There, beneath a tree, lay a body without a head, neck, or clothes, and upon seeing it, it seemed as if someone had placed it there deliberately. Now, witnessing this sight, the police cordoned off the area completely, not allowing any ordinary person to approach. Afterwards, the police began their investigation by first examining the area nearby. Just 20 meters away from the body, the police found the head and clothes stained with blood. Additionally, a few meters away from the body, the police also found some other items used in worship, such as a mirror, coconut, padukas, threads, turmeric powder, and kumkum powder, also known as vermilion. The police collected these items and sent the body to a nearby hospital for post-mortem. Subsequently, the files of missing persons were checked at the Ari police station, and the identification of this dead body was made as a boy named Brandon Gonzalez. As I mentioned earlier, the missing report of Brandon Gonzalez had been distributed to all nearby police stations by Dindoshi police. Now, the Ari police confirmed that he was the same boy who had gone missing 3 days ago on December 19th. Brandon Gonzalez's family was also informed, and thus the missing case of Gonzalez turned into a murder case. After this, as far as I have read, perhaps the police had to form 8+ teams to search for Gonzalez's killer, including a special team from the crime branch. But seeing the body of her only son in this condition, Gonzalez's mother Seema and elder sister Kashma were both in a terrible state of distress. So much so that when Seema saw her son in this condition, she fainted upon seeing the body. However, the police quickly began their investigation to find the culprits. On the other hand, some shocking details emerged in Gonzalez's post-mortem report. The post-mortem report stated that Gonzalez's tongue, voice box, skin from his right cheek, and even his entire neck were missing, with the neck bone intact. This means that someone had killed Gonzalez so brutally that even the small spine, as a fragment of his neck, was broken. All these details were horrifying the police because initially, they thought this case seemed to be a result of personal rivalry, as if someone had killed Gonzalez to settle a score, but the police were soon to be proven wrong. Actually, according to the post-mortem report, it was found that Gonzalez's death occurred due to the separation of his head from his body. However, forensic pathologists also checked whether Gonzalez was given any drugs or substances before being killed. But nothing like that was found in any post-mortem report. After that, the police found out that Gonzalez was murdered 3 days before his body was found, between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. on the same day he went missing. Additionally, there were no signs of any fight, struggle, or injury on his body, indicating that Gonzalez did not even try to save himself until his last breath. Furthermore, 2 marks were found on Gonzalez's body. Actually, there were 2 cross symbols on his forehead and right hand, which seemed to have been made with a sharp object. After learning about all these things, this case became even more intriguing for the police and investigators because now there were a lot more questions in front of the police. Looking at Gonzalez's body, it seemed as if his body had been cut twice. First, his head was separated from his shoulders, and then later his neck was cut from the head. Additionally, forensic experts said that where Gonzalez's body was found, there was absolutely no evidence of his murder. Not a single trace of blood was found there. So it was clear that Gonzalez was killed somewhere else, and then some parts of his body were removed to perform some rituals or something similar. Later, his body and clothes were thrown away in this deserted place. Here, when the police found the materials of worship, glass, coconuts, slippers, turmeric, and vermilion, at the crime scene, for the first time, this case seemed like a human sacrifice. After the possibility arose that Gonzalez might have been taken to another location and harmed, the police began checking the CCTV cameras around Ari Colony. But first, they checked the CCTV cameras around his house. They saw Gonzalez leaving with his dog around 7 o'clock in the morning and returning after a morning walk within an hour. However, just 10 minutes later, Gonzalez left his house again, but this time with a bag. What was in that bag could not be determined because the bag itself was not found. But then, a little further from Gonzalez's house, the police spotted a white Audi car in another CCTV footage with 2 people inside, a driver and a woman in a white Punjabi suit. The footage showed that they were following Gonzalez slowly with their car. The woman wearing the white Punjabi suit was giving directions to the driver, telling him to take the car in that direction. However, the The police also questioned Gonzalez family members to see if anyone might know that woman and driver. But the police did not get any good response from there either. The police suspected that there might have been more than 2 people in the car, and unfortunately, on the day Gonzalez's body was found, the 2 CCTV cameras in that area were not working. This raised suspicion for the police that Gonzalez was abducted on December 19th in this same car and then murdered elsewhere, with his body being thrown in a deserted place in Ari Colony on the dark night or morning of December 22nd. But since then, investigators have felt that perhaps a local person might be involved in this murder case, because the police checked more than 70 CCTV cameras in this entire case, but none of them recorded anything suspicious that would raise suspicion on any individual. The investigators clarified that perhaps the killers were aware of the location of every CCTV camera in Ari Colony. This helped them escape from the colony and Garagan. This made it clear that the killer was someone who was well acquainted with Garagan and the colony, because an outsider could not have known every road and CCTV location so well. The investigators explored all possible angles of Gonzalez's killing, such as a love affair angle, whether someone jealous killed Gonzalez, a personal rivalry, human sacrifice angle, robbery, and property dispute. But the police never found any leads in any angle. Although for some time, the police kept the angle of human sacrifice on the table and even questioned several tantrics, babas, and black magicians about the cut parts of the body, the mark of the cross on the forehead and right hand, and whether there was any connection between them or not. The police did not get any help from here either. Gonzalez was a middle-class boy who had decided to graduate in arts. However, due to some reasons, he dropped out of college as well. His father had passed away 3 years ago, leaving Gonzalez in a state of depression for a long time. During the police investigation, Gonzalez's call records were also checked, but no suspicious numbers were found. In fact, Gonzalez rarely talked to anyone except for his family, or perhaps 3 or 4 friends. But what intrigued the police in this case was finding a diary in Gonzalez's room. Within it were some sketches that further complicated this case. Actually, if these sketches are examined closely, it becomes apparent that they tell the story of 2 sacrifices. In the first, a person is attempting to cut off an animal's head while wearing a suit. Meanwhile, in the second sacrifice, a man's head is being cut off with a saw. In addition to these, an attempt has been made to portray the SpongeBob cartoon character as a monster. On the other side of the page, a picture of a deer without a head has been drawn, and right next to it, only the head of a lion cub has been drawn. Furthermore, when the police went inside Gonzalez's house, they found a strange sign on a wall just behind the door, as if it were some sort of cult symbol. What was even more surprising was that when the Mumbai police tried to recreate the crime scene with Gonzalez's dog, the startling thing was that Gonzalez's dog went straight to where Gonzalez's body had been lying near a tree. After a while, his dog arrived at the spot where Gonzalez's body was found, just a few meters away. Among all the cases we have explained on this channel so far, this case was the weirdest, like how Gonzalez's dog somehow went to the place where his body was found. It is possible that when Gonzalez first went out for a walk with his dog on December 19th, he might have already gone to the place where his body would later be found. Another point is that the white Audi car following Gonzalez might have been known to him, and he might have gone with them willingly, sitting in the car. Additionally, it is possible that after returning home, Gonzalez took the bag with him, which might have contained items related to worship, like coconut, padukas, etc., because it is also being suggested on the internet that perhaps Gonzalez sacrificed himself. Today, it has been over 7 years since this case, but the murderer of Brandon Gonzalez is still unknown. Meanwhile, Gonzalez's mother and sister have made numerous visits to the police station and the crime branch office to find out the status of their son Brandon Gonzalez's murder case. During this time, Gonzalez's mother and sister were afraid that the police might close the case. Due to this reason, Seema's elder daughter, Kashma, appealed to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the state's chief minister to seek justice. Well, if this case is solved in the future, we will definitely update you through this channel's community post. But so far, this case remains unsolved. With this, Brandon Gonzalez case also concludes here. Before moving forward, quickly subscribe to the channel. This is strange, you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Quickly subscribe to it. Now we jump to the next story. This is the story of Madanapalli city in the state of Andhra Pradesh, India, which is Asia's largest tomato market. Besides, there are many mountains here as well. It was January 24th, 2021, around 8:30 p.m. on Sunday night in Madanapalli, when Dr. V. Pradushatham Naidu, the head of the Naidu family, called his friend Raju and said on the phone, "Both my daughters are no longer in this world. Alikya, 27, and Saidivya, 22, have both passed away." But there was nothing to worry about. Tomorrow morning, they would return through reincarnation because the Kali Yuga was ending and the Satyug would begin from tomorrow. Upon hearing this, Raju said to his friend Dr. Naidu, "Everything is normal at home, and speaking such language about your daughters does not suit you." In response, Dr. Naidu said, "No, Raju, I am telling the truth. In a while, both I and your sister-in-law will leave our bodies in Kalyug and be born again in Satyug." Upon hearing this, Dr. Naidu's friend Raju started feeling extremely restless. Consequently, he abruptly ended the call and within a few minutes arrived at Dr. Naidu's house. Raju reached there, knocked on the door, and just as the door was about to open, Dr. Naidu himself appeared, looking completely normal. But when Raju went inside and saw the scene there, his eyes widened in shock, because Dr. Naidu had spoken the truth. Lying on the ground in the prayer room of his house was the lifeless body of his 27-year-old daughter, Alikya. She had completed her master's in Bhopal and was now preparing for the civil services. Her face was pale, and blood was oozing from various places. After this, Dr. Naidu took Raju to another room adjacent to the prayer room where the dead body of his 22-year-old daughter, Saidivya, lay on the ground. She had been struck with a trident of Lord Shiva on her forehead, and a small brass pot placed in the prayer room was inserted into her mouth. The clothes were removed from both bodies, and they were wrapped in red cloth. Additionally, their hair was partially cut, and they were placed in front of the statue of Lord Shiva in the temple. Many worship materials had been scattered around the bodies. However, despite seeing the bodies of their daughters, there was no sign of tension or sorrow on the faces of Dr. Naidu and his wife Padmaja. This behavior of his friend and his wife seemed very strange to Raju. Therefore, he bid them goodbye and left their house. However, instead of going home, he went straight to the police station and told the police the whole story of how these educated parents had sacrificed their daughters. He also informed them about the mental condition of Dr. Naidu and his wife. However, the police did not have much belief in Raju's story after hearing this strange tale. This was because for the past year, Dr. Naidu and his family, who had been living in the new house in Madanapalli, had earned quite a reputation in the city. Anyway, after that, the police station in charge, along with some officers, directly reached the Naidu family's house. When the police knocked on the door, once again it was Dr. Naidu who opened it, but seeing her husband's friend with him, Padmaja became very angry and started shouting at the police because they had once again disrupted their worship. Now, the argument between the police and the Naidu family attracted neighbors from nearby. As soon as the police entered the house and saw what was inside, they too were astonished. Later, after hearing Raju, the police realized that it was a case of superstition. Although Mr. and Mrs. Naidu repeatedly tried to convince the police that both their daughters would return to life before sunrise the next day, they kept saying that they only needed one day's time, and that tomorrow morning both their daughters would come back to life, and then everyone would be surprised. But the police knew that both girls were dead, so how could they come back to life? Therefore, Mr. and Mrs. Naidu were first explained this with great difficulty. But when they still did not understand, the police showed some firmness and took both of them to the police station. Afterwards, a forensic team was called in to investigate the crime scene. The forensic team continued their examination for some time and then sent the bodies for post-mortem. Now, the police had started investigating both inside and outside the house. Here, the police learned from neighbors of the Naidu family that someone from the family used to go out daily to buy something. But for the past 3 days, no one had come out of the house, nor had anyone gone inside, not even the maid who used to clean the house, as the family did not even call her. After that, the police directly approached the maid, who told them that 3 days ago she was told by the Naidus that they were going to perform a special worship in the house for 3 days, and until they called her, she should not come to work at the house. On the other hand, upon checking both girls' social media profiles and bookshelves inside the house, the police found out that Alikya highly respected the Indian philosopher Osho. On her social media posts, Osho's name appeared repeatedly, indicating that he was one of Alikya's favorite people. Additionally, Beside Alakya's dead body was a book by the spiritual guru Meher Baba. Besides this, pictures of Shway Sai Baba, Meher Baba, and Osho were plastered all over their house. Furthermore, neighbors often heard prayers and tantric chants from their house, and several times they saw some swamis entering the house. On the other hand, what was surprising was that just a few days before the murder, Alakya posted twice on her Instagram. In one post, she wrote, "Well, only Dr. Naidu and Padmaja, who were present in the custody, could reveal the truth behind this." However, controlling Padmaja was proving to be extremely difficult for the police. But before the custody, when the police were taking both husband and wife for a COVID test, Padmaja started saying, COVID has spread everywhere. It did not come from China. After getting their COVID tests done, Dr. Naidu informed the police about his background. Actually, Dr. Naidu had a master's in philosophy and science. In addition, he had obtained a PhD and was currently a professor of chemistry at a government degree college for women, not in a polytechnic. His wife Padmaja was a gold medalist in mathematics and had been teaching at the famous schools of Madnapal for nearly 23 years, including at Mastermind's IIT Towant High School. Alongside, she also had a master's in science. Additionally, Alakya, 27, was a postgraduate from Bhopal and then an aspirant for civil services. Furthermore, Saidivya, a 22-year-old, was training at the A.R. Rahman Music Conservatory in Mumbai after completing her Bachelor of Business Administration course. However, due to the lockdown, both of them had to return home. You might also wonder why, with such educated family members, these individuals attempted suicide. You'll find the answer by the end of the video. Afterwards, Alakya picked up Lord Shiva's trident from the temple and thrust it into her sister Saidivya's forehead. Then a copper vessel was placed in her mouth. Following the death of her younger sister Saidivya, Alakya told her mother that now she had to kill her. As a result, Padmaja struck Alakya on the head with a dumbbell kept in the house. Consequently, Alakya also died shortly thereafter. After killing both their daughters, both the husband and wife wandered around their bodies for quite some time. Now, because of the insistence of the wife and daughter, it was Dr. Naidu's turn. Perhaps out of fear, he called his friend and told him the whole matter, and if he hadn't made that call, perhaps neither of them would be in this world today. However, due to this, Padmaja scolded her husband, Dr. Naidu, a lot, saying, "You are a coward, because of you our secret got out and our daughters couldn't come back." After seeing all this, it was finalized in this case that due to mental illness, all these family members had planned this. And it was revealed from a psychiatrist's source that their entire family was dealing with a rare disorder called shared psychotic disorder. Actually, in this disorder, more than two people who are in close relationships have a similar way of thinking. And it is because of this disorder that Alakya and Saidivya are no longer in this world today. In this double murder case, Alakya had a Canadian friend who told the print media that he couldn't believe for many days that Alakya could do such a thing. After questioning on Monday evening, the funeral of both these girls was performed, and permission for this was given only to Dr. Naidu, while the girl's mother Padmaja was not allowed to participate for some reasons. In my opinion, in this case, Saidivya and Dr. Purushottam Naidu seem innocent to me. Although if they hadn't fallen into the temptation of Alakya and Padmaja, perhaps this would have been a happy family today. Moving on to the next case. The case of Christina and Thompson Harris. Christina and Jason Thomas Harris, both 40, had been married for 11 years by 2014. They wed in 2003 after dating for approximately 5 years. In 2009, Christina and Jason welcomed their first child, which brought significant changes to their lives. Despite the daily challenges and responsibilities, they were happy to be parents. Christina managed the household and cared for the children while Jason worked at a plastics factory. As the children grew older, Christina was able to contribute financially to the family by working. However, in May 2014, she had to take maternity leave because she was expecting their second child in a few weeks. On September 29, 2014, Jason communicated with Christina while at work. Christina was suffering from a cold. She had a severe cough and was not sleeping well, but she reassured her husband that she was fine. A few hours later, Jason called his wife at home but received no answer, which worried him. Unable to reach Christina, Jason asked a neighbor to check on her. He explained that Christina was ill and not answering the phone. The neighbor knocked on the front door but got no response, so she called Christina's name. Receiving no answer, she decided to try the door, found it unlocked, and entered the house. Upon entering the bedroom, she found Christina lying on the bed and could not wake her. The neighbor called 911 and ran to another neighbor, a nurse. The nurse checked Christina's pulse and confirmed that she had died. Thus, on September 29, 2014, 4 months after the birth of her second child, Christina was found dead at home. When the police arrived, Jason Harris was present. He told the police and paramedics that his wife had been sick but was alive when he left for work that morning. 2 days later, the medical examiner ruled that Christina died from an overdose of a controlled substance, a finding that shocked her family and friends. Most people who knew Christina, a mother of 2, including a newborn, believed that she had never used drugs. Christina's mother, Kathy, told police that her daughter had seemed fine when she saw her the day before she died. Police were therefore skeptical of Jason Harris's claim that his wife had a cold. According to Kathy, Christina said that her marriage to Jason was complicated. Jason was unhappy in the marriage, but did not want a divorce due to concerns about child support and custody. Neighbors who discovered Christina's body also provided additional information to the police. Jason reportedly told them that the night before Christina died, he had prepared cereal with milk for her. Then Christina passed out and dropped the plate. Police realized that Christina's family and friends had difficulty accepting that she might have been involved with drugs. Instead, police suspected that Jason Harris was involved in Christina's death. Christina's mother and sisters insisted that the police test her breast milk. According to Kathy, the police ignored the request for 48 hours. However, due to the family's persistence, the police eventually agreed to investigate. As a result, breast milk was used as evidence for the first time in Michigan history. As confirmed by Christina's family and friends, all drug tests at her workplace and at the hospital where she gave birth to her second child were negative. Her second child was only 4 months old when Christina died. Christina was breastfeeding, and Kathy confirmed that Christina was very careful about what she consumed because she did not want to affect her child. Christina often pumped breast milk while at work and stored it in the freezer. Some of the breast milk was left at Kathy's mother's house. They tested 3 bags of breast milk for possible drug residue. These bags were labeled with the dates they were frozen so that Christina knew which bag to thaw first. Experts tested all the samples, including the ones frozen just before Christina died, and found no signs of drugs. This proves that Christina did not use the substance that caused her death. Jason Harris's sister was the only person to suggest that Christina had used drugs, which prompted investigators to focus more on Jason and treat Christina's death as a homicide. The investigation was slow, and it is unclear what might have happened if Christina's family had not been actively involved in seeking the truth. Kathy repeatedly reminded Davison police about her daughter's case in August 2016, nearly 2 years after Christina's death. Not seeing the urgency or commitment to solve her daughter's case in Davison, Kathy asked the Davison police to transfer the case to the Michigan State Police, which had new investigators. From that point, the story began to unravel. Police gathered extensive information about Jason Harris, including his behavior before and after his wife's death. Jason had been having affairs with other women. Christina knew about this and confided in her family and coworkers that Jason had been texting other people while she was giving birth to their youngest child. Christina once told a coworker that if she died, Jason would be responsible. When asked if she was serious, she confirmed that she was. Jason told a coworker that he suspected the second child was not his biological offspring. He also complained that after the birth, Christina often became depressed, stayed in bed, and did not go to work. Jason frequently complained about Christina nagging him. A coworker recalled that Jason may have told him that he wanted Christina dead. He described the relationship between Jason and Christina as toxic and said they argued frequently. One of the most surprising and shocking aspects of this case is that Jason Harris did not hesitate to let others know he wanted to get rid of his wife. He attempted to do so, but unfortunately, no one paid attention to his words or actions before Christina died. Jason purchased poison twice and mixed it into her drinks. Both times, Christina noticed the unusual taste and refused to drink it. Jason then asked a coworker to help him find a poison that would not alter the taste or smell of drinks or food. He said he wanted to render Christina unconscious, so she would not feel anything. When he explained to the co-worker that Christina would not drink water because it tasted strange, the co-worker refused to speak to him further. The co-worker testified that Jason had discussed wanting Christina to stop nagging, but the co-worker initially believed Jason was joking. Jason also told a co-worker that he had hired someone to kill Christina, but that person was arrested for another matter before the murder could occur. Jason then offered the co-worker $10,000 from Christina's $100,000 life insurance policy to carry out the killing. The co-worker refused, believing Jason was merely venting his anger and making inappropriate jokes. According to the co-worker, he recalled a conversation in which Jason said, "I'm bored with her. I'm going to dump her." The police then decided to question the neighbor who had discovered Christina's body. The neighbor testified that she saw Christina's family truck in the driveway, but Christina did not answer the door. She entered the house and found Christina lying in bed, unresponsive. The neighbor asked Jason if she should try to wake Christina. He replied that Christina must have fallen asleep and that he would come home. The neighbor went back inside and removed the covers around Christina because she felt cold and noticed foam coming from her mouth and nose. She called 911 and another neighbor, a registered nurse. The nurse testified that Christina was cold, stiff, had no pulse, and had white foam at her mouth. She did not attempt resuscitation because she believed Christina was already dead. Jason told police that he had asked a neighbor to check on Christina and that he had to rush home because she was unresponsive. However, witnesses said Jason did not appear anxious or in a hurry. What raised suspicion about Jason was that morning, he called Christina's supervisor at work. He told her that Christina had died the night before and inquired about the $100,000 death benefit from Christina's life insurance policy through her work. Additionally, one of the women with whom Jason had an intimate relationship told investigators that Jason had contacted her on the day of Christina's death and said that his wife had died from an overdose of a controlled substance. This suggests that he knew what caused Christina's death even before the medical examiner's report. That evening, the neighbor he had asked to check on Christina saw him in his driveway. She said that Jason told her that Christina was not the angel her parents believed her to be, and that their child would soon learn both the good and bad aspects of Christina. He said that Christina had dropped her bowl of cereal and that he had told her to go to bed. Jason also told a neighbor that his wife had tossed and turned during the night and that he had heard her coughing before he left for work. Jason wondered if that had been her last breath. Jason told a police officer that Christina had been coughing heavily when he left the house. He also told the police that Christina had fallen asleep eating cereal the night before she died. Finally, Jason told Christina's mother, Kathy, that before her death, Christina had complained that her water tasted like chemicals. One of the primary motives in this case is believed to have been insurance money. Within a week of Christina's death, Jason and his mother went to Christina's workplace to inquire about the life insurance proceeds. Additionally, Jason received a $20,000 death benefit from a life insurance policy issued by his employer shortly after Christina's death. One of Jason's lovers moved in with him and his children. Christina's mother believed that Jason's lover moved in after Christina's funeral. However, Jason's neighbor testified that the lover had moved into Jason's home even before the funeral. The neighbor also stated that Jason's adult children from a previous marriage moved into the house within days of Christina's death. Police discovered that Jason had purchased a plane ticket to Rhode Island 9 days after Christina's death to visit a woman with whom he had exchanged over 5,800 text messages. County Medical Examiner Dr. Brian Hunter submitted post-mortem blood and urine samples for laboratory testing. Dr. Hunter determined that the test results were consistent with Christina having been poisoned by a lethal substance. Initially, Dr. Hunter had ruled her death an accident because there were no injection marks on Christina's body, and investigators found no powder residue or rolling papers next to the bed where she died. In 2016, the Michigan State Police took over the investigation into Christina's death. In 2019, after Christina's family disputed the cause of death, Dr. Hunter amended Christina's death certificate from accident to homicide. Police charged Jason with first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and delivery of a controlled substance resulting in death. He was denied bail. Jason's attorney, Nicholas Robinson, said that his client pleaded not guilty to the charges and intended to fight them. At the time of his arrest, Jason had lost his job after testing positive for drugs. Kathy's persistent efforts to ensure that law enforcement would hold the person responsible for her daughter's death accountable were not overlooked. Genesee County Prosecutor David Layton said that a few years ago, he began receiving Facebook messages and emails from a woman in Davison who claimed her daughter had died and that her death was not an accident. "It can't be happening," the woman told the prosecutor. "I am certain someone caused my daughter's death." Kathy's passionate pleas captured David Layton's attention, prompting authorities to re-examine Christina's death. "I will never forget what she wrote in an email. Prosecutor, you are my last hope. This is our last chance to get justice for my daughter. Please help me," David Layton said. At that moment, as he spoke to her, he was absolutely convinced that Christina's death was not an accident, but the result of foul play. It was Kathy's relentless efforts to seek justice for her daughter's death that led to this situation, and those efforts ultimately paid off. The trial began in 2020. The prosecution alleged that Jason had put a controlled substance in his wife's cereal bowl to kill her. He then went to work as usual, waited a few hours, and asked a neighbor to check on Christina. According to the prosecution, Jason wanted someone else to discover his wife's body in order to reduce suspicion against him. The direct evidence against Jason was overwhelming. Jason had a motive for killing Christina. He was having an affair with another woman, suspected she was being unfaithful, believed the second child was not his, and was tired of her constant nagging. Jason did not want a divorce because he did not want to pay child support or lose custody of their children. Before her death, Jason told a co-worker that he wanted Christina dead. On the morning of her death, Jason called her workplace to inquire about a $100,000 life insurance policy, and in that call, he stated that Christina had died the night before. The jury heard clear evidence that Jason not only wanted Christina dead, but that he had attempted to hire someone to kill her. He planned to do this and knew where to obtain illegal drugs. In fact, he had purchased such substances on multiple occasions to give to Christina. At trial, multiple witnesses testified that Christina did not use recreational drugs. Christina was very careful about what she consumed because she was breastfeeding. Furthermore, tests showed that her frozen breast milk contained no harmful substances. To support the theory that Jason had poisoned Christina's food, the prosecution presented toxicology reports. For example, Dr. Judge argued that Christina's death could have been caused by ingestion of some form of poison. The prosecution ruled out injection because no traces of needles or puncture marks were found at the scene. Dr. Judge also testified that inhalation was unlikely because no rolled-up dollar bills or snorting papers were found at the scene. The court gave Jason Harris an opportunity to speak, but he did not apologize or show remorse. Instead, he maintained his innocence. The judge noted that the jury did not believe his lies, ultimately exposing him as a selfish and deceitful murderer. On November 17, 2021, the jury found Jason Harris, 47, guilty on all charges. 3 weeks later, the court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He has appealed the verdict, however. After the trial, prosecutor David Layton expressed his condolences to Christina's family and friends, emphasizing that this was a tragic case. Layton stated that while the case included many unique and media-driven details, the most important consideration was the family's loss. "I hope this verdict helps them find comfort in knowing that justice has been served," he said. Jason requested a new trial on the grounds that his defense attorney had provided ineffective assistance. He introduced evidence in the form of his attorney's testimony, showing that the attorney failed to seek an independent expert opinion on the prosecution's evidence and failed to consult an independent toxicologist. Jason's defense attorney explained that this decision was part of a trial strategy, as he had thoroughly questioned Dr. Hunter and was able to demonstrate to the jury that Dr. Hunter had changed his opinion about the cause of death based on information from a related civil lawsuit. In February 2024, the Michigan Court of Appeals upheld Jason Harris's conviction. He remains in prison for life without the possibility of parole. Moving on to the next case. The case of Estebales Carranza. Estebales was born on September 1, 1978, in Guadalajara, Mexico. Her father, Armando, is a psychologist, journalist, and author of books on esotericism. Her mother, Angela, is Spanish. In 1983, at the age of 5, Estebales left Mexico with her parents and younger brother, settling in Barcelona, Spain. Estebales had a fairly normal childhood, although her father Armando was very strict and not easygoing. Her father's anger often made her think of ways to get rid of him. Despite this, he allowed her to study at prestigious schools and later supported her studies at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. As she grew up, she became sociable and had many friends. However, she also suffered from frequent mood swings and anger, during which she could become quite aggressive. As an adult, Estabales moved to Germany and lived in Munich for a while. She used her connections to find work and secured a job at an ice cream parlor in the nearby city of Nuremberg. She spoke German fluently, which helped her settle in easily, and her friendly demeanor made it simple for her to connect with the locals. While working at the ice cream parlor, she met her first husband, Holger Holtz, who sold refrigerators and was part of the Krishna religious community. He was 14 years older than she was, and a few weeks after they met, he proposed to her because he was passionately in love with her. They soon married and moved to Berlin. Estabales found various jobs, but her life was not fulfilling. Shortly after the wedding, she and Holger had conflicts. Despite his successful career, he began to insult and physically abuse her. Nevertheless, they continued their married life, and in 2000, they relocated to Vienna, Austria. In Vienna, they had the opportunity to start their own business, opening the ice cream parlor Schlickscherie on the busy Oswald Gass Street. The ice cream shop quickly became popular with the locals. Nearby was the Iman hairdressing salon, and at the end of the building's lobby, a staircase led to apartments on the upper floors. There was also a basement entrance located under the stairs. Estabales and Holger made a large sum of money. However, he demanded that she reimburse him for all the expenses incurred during the first year of opening the ice cream shop. Estabales, as the ice cream shop owner, dedicated herself to her work and grew the store successfully. Meanwhile, her husband Holger had an interest in weapons technology, which caused further conflicts between them. He asked her to join his Krishna religion, which she initially found strange, but in the end, she decided to follow it. Estabales' business allowed her to meet many people, including several men. Over the years, she had several lovers, some clients, others suppliers, tourists, or neighbors. One of them was Manfred Hinterberger, 48, a representative of a company manufacturing industrial equipment such as freezers, refrigerators, and ice cream machines. After many years of knowing each other, she began dating Manfred in 2008. She decided to divorce her husband, Holger, but he would only agree if she paid the debts she owed him. Since she did not want to pay the debts, they chose to live together in a small apartment. On April 27, 2008, after finishing her shift at the ice cream shop, Estabales returned home. Then she had a heated argument with Holger, during which he hurled insults at her and accused her of cheating throughout their marriage. In a moment of anger, he threatened to take drastic action. While he was seated at the computer, facing away from her, she took a weapon and attacked him. After ensuring he was dead, she moved his body to the bathroom and left it there. She was certain the gunshots would be heard by the neighbors, which meant the police would soon arrive at her house. However, nothing happened. After waiting until nightfall, Estabales moved the body to the living room sofa and went to bed. 2 days later, she attempted to dispose of the body by setting it on fire. However, the smoke escaping from her apartment attracted attention, and a neighbor called the fire department. When they tried to enter her apartment, she stopped them, claiming everything was fine and that she had simply burned her lunch. A few days later, Estabales considered buying an electric saw. Although she did not know how to use one, the store staff helped her learn. Upon returning home, she began dismembering the body, placing all the parts, including the head, into a bag and storing them in the freezer. Later, she transferred the remains into empty ice cream containers and covered them with cement. Next, she moved these containers to her ice cream shop and stored them in the basement freezer, where they were eventually discovered. Estabales' main motive for the crime was her frustration with her husband Holger, who refused to move out of their apartment and refused a divorce. Additionally, she had financial debts to him that she wanted to avoid repaying. As time passed, she continued to live her life normally, and no one seemed to notice Holger's disappearance. They had only been living in Austria for a short time, so they had very few friends there, and no one asked about him. If anyone inquired, she would mention that he had gone to India. The regular customers at her ice cream shop did not notice any change in her behavior, and no one suspected anything. Estabales' relationship with Manfred grew closer, and eventually they moved in together. She asked Manfred for money to help her business, and he gave her over $100,000, allowing her access to his bank accounts. However, he also wanted her to spend more time with him and to improve her appearance. To achieve this, he pressured her to get plastic surgery, which she did not want. She had dreams of becoming a mother, but since he already had children, he could not help her fulfill that desire. Their relationship took a turn for the worse when Estebal's discovered that Manfred had been having affairs with several other women. Feeling betrayed, she plotted her revenge. In preparation, she took shooting courses to improve the necessary skills. After completing the lessons, she felt ready to take action. To avoid leaving any evidence, she covered the floors and walls of their apartment with cling film. On the night of November 21st, 2010, Estebal's and Manfred returned from a joint trip and had sex. Afterward, she confronted him about his infidelity, but he denied it and fell asleep. In a moment of anger, she grabbed a gun and attacked him in the neck while he was sleeping. She left his body on the bed for the entire day before moving it to the bathroom. Using an electric saw, she cut the body into pieces, this time doing so with more care and skill. Estebal's could not find any cement, so she decided to store the body parts in refrigeration units in the basement. However, the unit could not fit the entire body, leaving her to hide most of the remains in her apartment, where she covered them with cat litter to minimize the smell of decomposition. After taking care of this, she continued with her daily routine. Meanwhile, Manfred's relatives began asking about his whereabouts. Estebal's told them he had left for Thailand. They believed her story and stopped asking further questions. Shortly after, Estebal's met Ronald, an Austrian man, who became her lover and the father of her unborn child. It seemed as though her life was improving. After all, she had managed to evade the consequences of her previous actions. Who would suspect that this charming and friendly woman, known by everyone as kind-hearted, was capable of such deeds? One day, workers repairing the building next to Estebal's ice cream shop entered its basement to access the sewer and discovered a damaged pipe. The building's common drainage system was located in the storage rooms, which were separate small basements used for storage. As they entered the basement, they smelled rottenness mixed with cat litter deodorant, which piqued their curiosity. They traced the odor to two large freezers that appeared to have been abandoned for a long time. When they opened the freezers, they were shocked to find containers filled with cement. Inside one freezer, they saw a hand and a leg, in the other a head. They also discovered two rifles with optical sights, a woman's handbag containing a pistol, a beret, and a notebook with notes in Spanish. Terrified, they quickly left the basement. They informed the hairdresser next door about the discovery, urging her to call the police. When the police arrived, they searched the basement and found the remains of two dismembered bodies. One was in several pieces, while the other was just a severed head, all encased in cement-filled containers. The remains were sent to the forensic medical examination in Vienna. During the initial investigation, authorities were unable to determine who owned the basement. This was because the basement had not been used for a long time and no other suspicious items were discovered. Investigators began to analyze the evidence they had collected. The next day, after the police arrived at the crime scene, Estebal's came to work. A neighbor informed her about the discovery in the building's basement and mentioned that the police had started an investigation. This news made her extremely worried, forcing her to quickly return home. She locked the ice cream shop and put up a temporarily closed sign. As she left, her face betrayed her nervousness, looking very different from her usual demeanor. Naturally, her worried expression caught the attention of nearby residents, who began to mock her as she crossed the street toward the bus stop. They saw her take out her phone to make a call before getting into a taxi. Then she went to the bank, withdrew all her money, and purchased a plane ticket to Paris. However, she was never able to use this ticket. Austrian police were waiting for her at the airport. They were aware of the ticket she had purchased, but realized she had not checked in for her flight. Police issued a warrant for her arrest on Wednesday, June 8, 2011, after a search warrant was issued. Investigators believed the containers found in the basement belonged to her ice cream shop, but locating her became difficult since she had stopped using her mobile phone. Meanwhile, she remained in Vienna, took another taxi, and asked the driver to take her to northern Italy. She then traveled to the mountains and reached Basu, from where she continued for another 6 kilometers to Talamadzu, where she decided to stay in a hotel for a few days. Before arriving, she asked the taxi driver to book a room for her because she could not do it herself. Later, the taxi driver saw her picture in the news and informed the police that he had driven her there. Unfortunately, by that time, it was already too late. In this city, Estebal's stayed for one night before taking a train to Udina, which is 50 kilometers from Almaty. There, she met Ivan, a street artist who noticed her crying at a cafe and offered his help. When he approached her to ask if she needed help, she told him about her problems, especially her husband's cruelty that forced her to leave home. Ivan invited her to stay in his apartment for a few days. She agreed, and he offered her the couch while he slept in his bed. During her stay, Estebal's helped Ivan with cleaning, shopping, and cooking, and everything seemed fine until he discovered her identity through a newspaper article. This revelation shocked and frightened him. He asked her to leave immediately, admitting that he knew she was evading the law. She denied his accusations. He then went to the nearest police station to inform them that Estebal's, a woman wanted by the authorities, was in his home. Even then, he was surprised to find Estebal's waiting for the police at his house. She did not resist arrest. She was taken into custody as the primary suspect in several murders. She was arrested on June 10, 2011, at 7:30 a.m. in Udina, Italy. After her arrest, Estebal's was taken to the police station for questioning, where she confessed to 2 murders, one in 2008 and another in 2010. She used the same methods for both crimes, but claimed that the second murder was executed more skillfully. Meanwhile, Austrian authorities quickly requested her extradition. While in Italy, forensic experts identified the second victim as Manfred Hinterberger. During her interrogation, she attempted to justify her actions, saying that both men, Holger and Manfred, had subjected her to violence and cruelty. She felt very angry about the way they treated her. She described the murders as a response to the physical and psychological abuse she had suffered. Estebal's admitted that she had attacked Holger and Manfred on the head, then used an electric saw. She told investigators that she killed the first man, Holger, to improve her skills. She took shooting lessons and attended a course on how to work with cement to prepare for the second murder, Manfred. At the time of her arrest in Italy, she was pregnant with Ronald's child, and during a medical examination, it was revealed that she was 2 months along. 14 days after her arrest, on June 24, 2011, Estebal's was extradited by an Austrian court and detained on suspicion of involvement in 2 murders. Her lawyer argued that although police testimony is considered legal evidence under Italian law, Austrian law is very different. He asked that it not be admitted as evidence in her case. He said he planned to sue several Austrian tabloids for making the accusations against her. Estebal's was arrested and held in a prison in Vienna until January 11, 2012, when she was taken to the hospital to give birth. After her son was born, he was immediately given to his father. From the start of the trial, Estebal's admitted her guilt. While the prosecution and psychiatrists portrayed her as a ruthless, manipulative, and selfish individual, despite being educated and fluent in 3 languages, she committed extreme acts for her own benefit. The defense argued that Estebal's was a victim of her own emotions. They claimed she was under the influence of illegal drugs and prescribed medications, stating she took 5 different drugs 3 times a day, including antidepressants and treatments for schizophrenia. However, evidence showed that her actions were intentional. She testified that Manfred pressured her to undergo numerous cosmetic surgeries, including nose jobs and Botox, and forced her to exercise constantly to maintain her figure, despite her long 12-hour shifts at the ice cream parlor. Estebal's alleged that people mocked her, which became unbearable for her and ultimately led to her decision to kill Manfred. The psychiatrist explained that she simply did not know how to reject men who made her unhappy. She resorted to an extreme solution. She believed the easiest way to deal with men who were no longer needed was to kill them. Whenever men caused her trouble or ridiculed her, she concluded that killing them was the best option. On November 22, 2012, Estebal's Carranza was found guilty of murdering Holger Holtz in 2008 and Manfred Hinterberger in 2010. She was sentenced to life imprisonment in a facility for the criminally insane. Along with her attorneys, she appealed the decision, but the sentence was upheld by the Higher Regional Court of Vienna on March 20, 2013. In November 2017, it was announced that Estebal's would be transferred from a women's prison in Lower Austria to a prison in the market town of Upper Austria. She was diagnosed with a serious personality disorder. She exhibited abnormal behavior, and had a mindset akin to a princess seeking rescue from a prince, longing for a fictional world where she was the center of attention. At the time of her crime, Estabales was mentally stable, as she was not under the influence of drugs and was fully aware of her actions. Psychiatrists expressed concern that she might commit serious crimes again after her release. During a psychiatric evaluation, she stated that some part of her brain is red, and when it activates, she cannot control herself. Moving on to the next case. The case of Greg Mulvihill. Diana Lovejoy and Greg Mulvihill, both living far from their families, met through an online dating site in 2005. They quickly developed a strong connection, and their relationship soon became serious. The couple decided to move in together in San Diego. Diana had always been passionate about athletics and fitness, beginning with playing sports in high school and eventually becoming a competitive triathlete. The couple shared a love for the outdoors, which played an important role in their relationship. During the 2000s, San Diego was emerging as a major tech hub, and Diana and Greg took advantage of the plentiful job opportunities. Both excelled in their careers, with Diana earning a reputation among her co-workers for her dependability. After 2 years of dating, they married in 2007, marking the start of a new chapter in their lives. For their honeymoon, they traveled to Costa Rica, where they attended surf school. In the early years of their marriage, Diana and Greg were deeply in love. They shared a zest for life and seized every opportunity for adventure, enjoying countless experiences together. Following their wedding, they moved to Carlsbad, a picturesque suburb north of San Diego that offered an ideal mix of natural beauty, outdoor activities, and privacy. Diana was immediately enchanted with the area and felt as though she was living her dream when she settled into her ideal home. However, 3 years into their marriage, their relationship began to change. Diana started experiencing symptoms that led her to believe she had fibromyalgia, a chronic condition characterized by widespread pain and tenderness in specific areas of the body. Although the precise cause of fibromyalgia remains unknown, multiple factors are thought to contribute to its onset. Diana's diagnosis had a significant effect on her marriage to Greg. Once energetic and adventurous, she struggled to adjust to her new limitations, including reduced activity and increased need for rest. This sudden shift in lifestyle created challenges for their relationship. In 2011, Greg took Diana on a relaxing trip to Santa Cruz, California, to help her cope with her condition. As a devoted husband, Greg recognized that fibromyalgia was affecting Diana's well-being, causing constant muscle pain, fatigue, and limited energy. The illness made it difficult for her to maintain her career, and eventually, Diana stepped away from work to focus on managing her symptoms. She began spending more time at home in Carlsbad. Above all, Diana's greatest desire was to become a mother, to love and raise a child, and to feel confident and happy. Diana and Greg had been trying to conceive for years, but Diana suffered multiple miscarriages. These losses took a physical and emotional toll on her. Although she did not have children, Diana devoted her love to her 2 cherished cats, Lanny and Turtle. Her world was further shaken when Turtle fell ill and eventually passed away. To comfort Diana during this difficult time, Greg surprised her with a new kitten, which she named Taffy. This thoughtful gesture brought her immense solace. In a surprising turn of events, Diana discovered that she was pregnant after years of unsuccessful attempts to conceive. Overjoyed, Greg eagerly anticipated becoming a father, while Diana felt her dream of motherhood was finally within reach. In September 2012, Diana gave birth to a baby boy, and Greg took time off work to bond with their newborn son. Greg cherished being a father and treasured every moment with his child. Diana, however, was constantly concerned about their son's health and well-being. Over time, she began to suspect that her son might have a condition similar to her fibromyalgia. Greg, on the other hand, was confident that their son was healthy and saw no reason for concern. Despite their differing views on their son's health, Diana remained convinced that he was unwell. She conducted extensive research and discovered a medication called guaifenesin, similar to Mucinex, which was often used to treat chest infections. Some believed the medication could also relieve fibromyalgia symptoms. Diana was determined to give her son high doses of guaifenesin, but Greg strongly opposed the idea, fearing it was unnecessary and potentially harmful. This disagreement over their son's healthcare created mounting tension in their marriage. Their relationship became further strained after Greg suffered a shoulder injury that forced him to leave his job. As a result, household income decreased, prompting Diana to take a sales position to help compensate. She also attempted to earn additional income by producing online cooking videos, with Greg handling the filming. However, this venture did not generate the desired results. Diana also appeared in promotional videos for a cat litter brand, but this effort likewise failed to produce significant revenue. As their financial struggles continued, arguments between Diana and Greg escalated, particularly regarding the health of their 2-year-old son. By this time, conflicts were constant, and their marriage was at risk. Diana confided in co-workers that she felt Greg was unsupportive and unhelpful. In July 2014, Greg had a troubling encounter with a police officer who questioned him about abuse allegations made by Diana. According to the officer, Diana had filed multiple police reports against Greg, resulting in his removal from the family home. Diana and their son were allowed to remain in the residence, leaving Greg to deal with the consequences of the allegations. Diana told a trusted friend that she had been assaulted by Greg while she was sleeping. She had taken medication that made her drowsy, and upon waking, she realized Greg was touching her inappropriately without her consent. Diana also accused Greg of sexually abusing their son. Authorities, including Child Protective Services, became involved after these allegations were made. Greg denied the accusations, asserting that Diana was making the claims because he disagreed with her about their son's health. In response, Greg filed for divorce from Diana and sought custody of their son. Detectives investigated the claims that Greg had abused Diana and their child, but found no evidence to support the allegations. Psychiatric evaluations of Greg and the boy revealed no signs of abuse. A judge ultimately dismissed the case and awarded Greg 50-50 custody of their son, much to Diana's dismay. Despite this, Diana remained committed to being a devoted mother while maintaining distance from Greg and the associated conflict. As part of their divorce agreement, Diana remained in the house and agreed to compensate Greg for his share of the property. By 2016, the former couple had established a relatively peaceful co-parenting arrangement, with both having equal access to their son. This fragile peace was shattered on September 1, 2016, when the Carlsbad Police Department received a call from Jason Kovac, a friend of Greg's. Jason called 911 to report that Greg had been shot multiple times and was bleeding heavily. A patrol officer from the Carlsbad Police Department responded immediately and found Jason and Greg on the side of the road. Jason informed the officer that the shooting had occurred about half a mile away. Recognizing that waiting for an ambulance could endanger Greg's life, the officer drove him to the hospital himself. Meanwhile, the SWAT team arrived and began searching the area for the shooter, but was unable to locate anyone. At the hospital, doctors rushed Greg into emergency surgery, where they discovered he had sustained a gunshot wound to his chest. Greg survived the operation, but was placed on life support afterward. While Greg was recovering, detectives interviewed Jason, who remained shaken by the incident. Jason explained that Greg had received a call from a private investigator claiming to possess important documents related to his custody and divorce proceedings with Diana. The investigator did not provide a name, but gave Greg a specific meeting time and location. Although initially hesitant, Greg's curiosity prevailed, and he asked Jason to accompany him for backup. Jason agreed, and they armed themselves with a flashlight and a child's baseball bat. They arrived at the remote location, which was extremely dark due to the new moon, with only a small sliver of moonlight providing illumination. According to Jason, the caller instructed Greg to locate a package attached to an electricity pole. As Greg approached the package with his flashlight, scanning the area, he suddenly shouted, "Gun!" and a gunshot rang out. Greg and Jason ran for their lives as bullets whizzed past them. They eventually reached their car, where Jason realized that Greg had been shot and called 911. Jason could not provide a detailed description of the shooter, but he led detectives to the exact location of the shooting. During their investigation, authorities discovered an intriguing clue near the electricity pole, a neatly folded Angry Birds towel that appeared to have been intentionally left to mislead Greg. Jason reported hearing 6 gunshots, but investigators found no shell casings or weapon at the scene. The lack of forensic evidence suggested that the shooter was experienced and skilled at covering their tracks. During their search, detectives noticed a strong odor of feces in the air, which led them to a pile of feces accompanied by a towel that appeared to have been used for cleanup. Investigators preserved both the feces sample and the towel as potential evidence, carefully packaging and transporting them to the crime lab for analysis. Obtaining DNA evidence from the feces sample could take up to a month. In the meantime, detectives continued investigating all available evidence and following up on leads, focusing on Greg's estranged wife, Diana Lovejoy, and questioning her about any possible involvement in the shooting. Diana denied any knowledge and provided an alibi, claiming she was at home with her son at the time of the incident. Greg unexpectedly came off life support and began to recover. Once well enough, detectives interviewed him regarding his estranged wife's potential involvement. Greg expressed doubt that Diana was capable of such violence, but acknowledged their past conflicts, an ongoing divorce and custody dispute over their son. Detectives traced the phone number used to lure Greg to the remote area to a pay-as-you-go plan and a purchase at a Best Buy near Carlsbad. They obtained video footage of the transaction, which showed Diana Lovejoy buying the phone. This solidified Diana as the prime suspect, and she was arrested during a traffic stop. During her arrest, she claimed innocence, but when confronted with the evidence, she admitted to purchasing the phone. She then revealed that she feared Greg, had bought a gun, and had taken shooting classes at Iron Sights, where she met instructor Weldon McDavid, an ex-Marine weapons expert. Diana's friendship with Weldon became romantic and intimate. She told detectives that their plan was to scare her estranged husband, Greg, to stop his alleged harassment. Weldon instructed Diana to buy a specific phone, which they then used to lure Greg to a remote location. Diana claimed that Weldon's role was limited to threatening Greg, and that he was not supposed to use violence. She drove Weldon to the site and picked him up afterward. When she heard police sirens, Weldon told her he had shot Greg in self-defense because Greg allegedly made aggressive movements toward him. Diana denied involvement in the shooting and stated that she never asked Greg to take violent action against her. She was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Greg recovered from his gunshot wounds and was released from the hospital. News of Diana's alleged involvement shocked the public. Weldon was located and brought in for questioning. He told detectives that he had been at home, 30 minutes away, on the night of the shooting. When asked for a DNA sample, Weldon became nervous. Detectives asked whether his DNA could be at the crime scene, and Weldon claimed he remembered stopping to use the bathroom on a dirt road the night before. Investigators obtained a search warrant and discovered a rifle with a live round and 6 spent shell casings in Weldon's garage. The shell casings matched a witness's account of hearing 6 gunshots. Weldon was arrested for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. During a search of Diana's house, detectives found a suspicious search history on her computer. She had searched for New Moon, which coincided with the night of the shooting. This was significant because the minimal ambient light during a new moon would make the location ideal for an attack. Detectives concluded that Diana had premeditated knowledge of the shooting and a motive to kill Greg. She would have been required to pay him $120,000 in their divorce settlement, and eliminating him would have avoided that obligation. The trial of Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid began in October 2017. Weldon claimed he never intended to shoot Greg, asserting that his goal was only to scare him. According to Weldon, the situation escalated when either Greg or Jason shouted, "I got a gun." Weldon stated that, as a skilled marksman, he could have killed Greg if he had wanted to. However, the prosecution presented a different theory. They argued that Weldon did not shoot Greg because Greg had shined a flashlight in his eyes, disorienting him in the darkness. Having been in the dark for an extended period, Weldon's sense of direction was impaired, which ultimately saved Greg's life. The jury found Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Upon hearing the verdict, Diana collapsed, though the state believed she was feigning it. Weldon was sentenced to 50 years to life, while Diana received a sentence of 26 years to life. Both continue to maintain their innocence. Moving on to the next case. Harmony Montgomery. In December 2021, the name Harmony Montgomery first made headlines across the United States when a missing persons investigation was launched to find the 7-year-old girl. Since then, both her father and stepmother have been arrested and charged. The home where she had lived in Manchester, New Hampshire, has been searched for days, and the reward for information leading to her discovery has exceeded $140,000. Yet the strange part is that before all of this, nobody seems to have seen Harmony for more than 2 years. So who is Harmony Montgomery? Why did it take so long for anyone to notice that this little girl was missing? Where had she been all this time? And is it now too late to save her life? Little Harmony was not born under a fortunate star. Both of her parents have a problematic history of substance abuse, and she had to cope with a visual impairment in one eye throughout her early life. Her mother, Crystal Sorry, a resident of Massachusetts, lost custody due to addiction issues when Harmony was around 4 years old. Sorry had to surrender Harmony to the state in the summer of 2018. Afterward, the girl's father, Adam Montgomery, gained sole custody in February 2019 and moved her to New Hampshire. At the time Harmony went missing, she was living with her father, Adam, his wife, Kayla Montgomery, and their children at the family property. According to records, Harmony had been in and out of foster care for much of her life. While some children do become caught up in the legal system for years, Harmony was not one of those who slipped through the cracks. She went missing from her own father's home, and he neither reported her absence nor attempted to seek help or locate his daughter. What, then, was his involvement in her disappearance? Authorities stated that they first became aware of the case when they received a call from Harmony's mother, Crystal Sorry, in November 2021. She had been trying to locate her daughter for months, but said that her ex-husband had blocked all attempts at communication. Sorry told police that the last time she saw Harmony was during a FaceTime video call with Adam Montgomery around Easter 2019. Since then, she had made numerous unsuccessful attempts to find her daughter by contacting schools and checking addresses associated with Adam Montgomery. She stated that by the previous year, Adam and his partner Kayla had blocked all communication with her. News reports indicated that Sorry had repeatedly shared concerns about Harmony's well-being with Blair and Jonathan Miller, a couple who had fostered and eventually adopted Harmony's younger brother, Jameson, in June 2019. The couple had also tried to connect with Harmony directly and told Sorry multiple times that they would adopt her if necessary. Harmony spent significant time in foster care alongside her younger biological brother, Jameson. The Millers, who had expressed willingness to adopt Harmony if needed, were deeply invested in the search for the missing child. They actively attempted to make contact with Harmony over the 2-year period, reporting that Jameson missed his sister and would cry at night for her. Despite their repeated efforts, the couple was never able to speak with Harmony directly, but maintained ongoing communication with Sorry regarding attempts to open a line of contact with the girl's father. On November 18, 2021, Sorry formally reported Harmony missing to the Manchester Police Department. She made her first public appearance at a candlelight vigil on January 8, following authorities' search of the daughter's last known residence. "I just don't feel that in my heart," Sorry told reporters at the time. "Like, I don't feel like I lost her. And a mother knows. A mother knows if your baby's here or not. I know she's here." She shared a message for her daughter. "Hi, baby. If you can see me and hear me, I want you to know that I never stop looking for you, and I won't stop fighting until I find you, okay? You stay strong, and Mommy's right here fighting for you. I love you." Now this is where the timeline of events begins to get confusing. And that is usually the point in any investigation when you recognize that someone has been lying. Mrs. Sorry told police she had not been able to reach her daughter since they last spoke on a video call in April 2019. After that, she stated, Montgomery cut off all contact between her and her daughter. However, Montgomery told investigators he last saw his daughter around Thanksgiving 2019, claiming that Mrs. Sorry had picked her up from Manchester to take her to live with her. The criminal complaint indicates that Montgomery said he believed his daughter was living with his ex and showed little emotion or reaction when officers expressed concern over whether Harmony was alive when they contacted him in December. His account was also contradicted by Kayla Montgomery's version, who said she last saw Harmony the day after Thanksgiving, when her husband claimed he was driving her to see Mrs. Sorry. Additionally, in other testimony, Adam Montgomery's uncle, Kevin Montgomery, told investigators that he had not seen Harmony or his nephew since late 2019, when she was 5 years old. Police interviews with other family members revealed that Montgomery was allegedly abusive toward his daughter, including giving her a black eye, forcing her to clean the toilet with her toothbrush, and making her stand in a corner for hours as punishment. Montgomery's brother, Michael Montgomery, told investigators he was concerned that Adam was physically abusive to the child and was extremely short-tempered with her. Jevon Montgomery said he noticed Harmony had a black eye in July 2019, which his nephew admitted to causing by hitting her in the face, according to the criminal complaint. "I bashed her around this house," he said his nephew told him. Kevin said he contacted DCYF at that time, and he also observed that his nephew subjected Harmony to other forms of abusive discipline, including scrubbing a toilet with her toothbrush and being spanked hard on the butt. A neighbor described it as a bad situation at the property, with many people living there at different times, adults arguing in the street, junk piled up in the yard, and electricity being turned off at one point. The electricity was cut off, and they ran a generator all summer with wiring running through the window. The neighbor stated the Montgomerys were essentially squatting at the home after it had fallen into foreclosure, and Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were refusing to leave. "We didn't intermingle with them as it was a bad situation," she said. "There were many different people living there, piles of junk in the driveway, and junk outside." She said she went away for the Thanksgiving holidays in 2019 and returned to find the family had finally packed up and moved out. Another neighbor on the street where Harmony lived also stated that the family moved on Thanksgiving 2019, the same time Adam Montgomery claims he last saw the missing child. Manchester police stated definitively that Harmony has not been seen since around October or November 2019, when she was 5 years old. Yet a missing persons investigation was only launched in December 2021. Mrs. Sari has publicly stated that her daughter was failed by everyone. Despite multiple attempts to reach out to her daughter or at least find out more, no concerned authorities paid attention. And the girl's father clearly did not care about what happened to the child. The last confirmed sighting of Harmony by law enforcement was on September 11, 2019, when Manchester police officers were called to the home at 77 Guildford Street in Manchester, where she lived. Police Chief Aldenberg, currently in charge of the case, previously said the last police call to the property was in October 2019, but confirmed he had confused the dates in a press briefing on January 12. Despite the date correction, the police chief stated that investigators still believe Harmony was last seen in October or November of that year. Harmony's father and his wife were both arrested and charged with offenses related to the missing child in early January. Adam Montgomery was arrested on January 4th and charged with second-degree felony assault, 2 misdemeanor counts of endangering the welfare of a child, and 1 misdemeanor count of interference with custody. On the assault charge, he is accused of hitting Harmony in the face sometime in July 2019, giving her a black eye, according to the criminal complaint. Officials stated that Montgomery is not cooperating with the investigation into his daughter's disappearance and has refused to reveal her whereabouts. The day after her husband's arrest, Kayla Montgomery was also arrested on 1 felony charge of welfare fraud for allegedly fraudulently collecting welfare benefits for the missing child between December 2019 and June 2021. Mrs. Montgomery, who has 3 children with her husband, is accused of obtaining $1,500 in food stamp benefits meant for Harmony between December 2019 and June 2021, despite the girl not living with them. Prosecutors have since dropped that welfare fraud charge and added 3 new charges: 1 count of theft by deception and 2 misdemeanor counts of welfare fraud. The charges allege that Mrs. Montgomery made intentionally false statements about her stepdaughter's whereabouts in February and March 2021 to claim benefits. Following the escalation of the police investigation into the case, several disturbing details about Harmony's father surfaced. Adam Montgomery has a history of violence and a lengthy criminal record, including convictions for shooting a man in the head during a drug deal just 6 months before Harmony was born. He was also convicted in 2010 for attacking 2 women at gunpoint. It has also emerged that Montgomery is a suspect in the cold case murder of a 28-year-old man in Lynn, New Hampshire, in February 2008. Darlin Guzman was found shot in the chest in the parking lot of the former White Hen convenience store in Lynn's Austin Square on the night of February 10, 2008. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. A source in Boston law enforcement told reporters that Montgomery, who was 18 at the time, and 2 unnamed family members had been the focus of the murder investigation from the start. The 3 family members had been in contact with the victim earlier that day and planned to meet him at the convenience store, which culminated in gunfire according to the source. The victim's car was later found abandoned in the direction of Bedford, New Hampshire, where Montgomery lived at the time. No one has ever been charged with Mr. Guzman's murder, but the source said Montgomery remains the focus of the investigation to this day. Almost 14 years after that killing, Adam Montgomery and his wife are now charged on counts related to his missing daughter. However, while they face serious offenses including child abuse and welfare fraud, no charges have been brought against anyone directly in connection to Harmony's disappearance. So why was Harmony not reported missing for 2 years? Mrs. Sari has accused the authorities of failing her daughter. She said she made multiple attempts to raise concerns with child services. After November 18th, when she contacted Manchester police saying she believed her daughter was missing, someone finally took notice. Police officers reached out to the New Hampshire Division for Children, Youth and Families, or DCYF, regarding the missing child's location. Then, on December 27th, the DCYF reported that it was also unable to locate Harmony. Manchester police announced a search was launched on December 31st. Emails sent by Mrs. Sari to the Manchester mayor's office, pleading for help in finding her daughter, have also now surfaced. "Please, I'm begging for help in finding my daughter," she wrote on December 29th. In her emails, Mrs. Sari stated that Adam Montgomery had never enrolled their daughter in school and that she had missed important doctor's appointments since infancy due to a disability in her eye. The emails were sent just 2 days before police officially reported Harmony missing. In addition to the repeated attempts to raise the alarm, the family was already well known to child services. Newly released records, published on January 12th, show that police officers were called to the Guilford Street home at least 10 times between February 2019, when Montgomery gained custody of Harmony, and her last sighting in the fall. Reports included claims of domestic disturbances, animal welfare concerns, and issues regarding the living conditions in the home. The DCYF was informed about some of the incidents. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu announced on January 12th that the DCYF is conducting an internal review of its handling of Harmony's case. However, the governor defended the state's actions, stating, "As soon as we found out that this child may not have been showing up for school for quite some time, it was reported up to us. The team got right on it. It wasn't a delay. It didn't sit in a file on somebody's desk." An independent investigation is also being conducted by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate after Harmony was moved from Massachusetts into the custody of her father in New Hampshire in February 2019. No officials in New Hampshire and Massachusetts were passing blame to one another. The New Hampshire governor sent a letter to Massachusetts court officials criticizing a judge for placing Harmony in the care of her monster father, given his violent history and long criminal record. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker responded to the criticism by saying he felt the pain, but that he wanted to wait for the results of the independent review by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate. Investigators have revealed very few details about what they believe may have happened to Harmony. The Guilford Street property has been a central focus of much of the search, with investigators seen working in the home and backyard for multiple days. However, Manchester police stated that the search at the property had concluded. It is unclear whether anything of interest was discovered, and no other search locations have been identified. Chief Aldenburg insisted on January 12th that investigators are still operating under the belief that Harmony is alive. However, he admitted feeling somewhat discouraged by the case so far and appealed to the public to come forward with information, stating, "Somebody out there knows something." Despite national attention and painstaking efforts to find the missing child, investigators appear to have made very little progress. Although concerning, the lack of progress is perhaps unsurprising, as anyone with information about what happened to the little girl has had a more than 2-year head start over investigators. On June 14, 2022, law enforcement officials were observed transporting a refrigerator and removing potential pieces of evidence from a Manchester home where Harmony Montgomery's father and stepmother, Adam and Kayla, once lived. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer stated that bringing in a refrigerator is usually done to preserve biological evidence. If a body or body parts were found in a freezer, law enforcement would want to maintain the level of decomposition. Coffindaffer said, "I have a really creepy feeling about this. It's not good." Several law enforcement agencies were seen outside the Union Street apartment complex, where investigators were focusing on the second-floor unit where Montgomery's father, Adam Montgomery, and his now estranged wife, Kayla, once lived. A woman named Darcy Hamilton, who lives behind the apartment complex, told a reporter that she briefly saw police enter the building on Monday, and it seemed casual. By 9 a.m. Tuesday, however, Hamilton said she observed a full-scale investigation from her balcony, which included 6 to 7 officers behind the building at any given time. She added that she saw an individual in an FBI t-shirt and one man in a hazmat suit, noting that the front of the complex was a media circus. Investigators were later seen removing a refrigerator wrapped in biohazard tape from the apartment and loading it into a truck. A camera was also used to inspect the sewer in front of the building. I've known about the case since 2021, when Harmony was initially reported missing. It's all over Manchester on signs and billboards, Hamilton said. But I had no idea that her father had lived behind me. Noting that she has a 7-year-old daughter, Hamilton added, "My heart is in my stomach right now thinking that something could have happened to that little girl here." Following this raid, Crystal Sorry publicly stated, "I know in my heart this is no longer a rescue mission. They're looking for a body." In a troubling follow-up, Kelsey Small, a former girlfriend of the father of missing Harmony Montgomery, was recently found dead in Manchester, police said. Small, 27, had been with Adam Montgomery when police discovered the homeless couple sleeping in a car on December 31, 2021, during the early days of the search for Harmony. The cause of death is still pending, but it does not appear to be suspicious, according to police spokeswoman Heather Hamill. Court records indicate that police were on their 4th day of searching for Harmony when they found Adam Montgomery and Small sleeping in a car on New Year's Eve. The car was parked on Harvell Street on the west side, close to the Gifford Street home where the Montgomery family had lived 2 years earlier. Small told police she had been romantically involved with Adam Montgomery for over a year. She knew he had 4 children from previous relationships, but he was not in contact with any of them and never mentioned Harmony, she told police. She had no knowledge of Harmony's whereabouts. Police eventually arrested Adam Montgomery, but never charged Small with any crime. So what happened to Harmony Montgomery, and where is she now? If her father is innocent, why did he never report her disappearance? And when her mother, Crystal, tried to locate her daughter, why weren't police and local child protective services supporting her? As this case continues to unfold, the hope remains that Harmony's mother will find the justice she deserves, whether her daughter is deceased or still alive. Police have stated that Harmony is 8 years old and should be wearing glasses due to blindness in one eye. It is a heartbreaking story, and we hope, with everything possible, that somehow, against all odds, Harmony Montgomery might still be found alive. Moving on to the next case. Case of Ted Ammon. Hampton, a popular seaside resort on Long Island, is home to many wealthy New Yorkers and is generally considered a safe, crime-free area. However, in 2001, the first murder in 20 years occurred there, and the brutality of the crime shattered the long-standing tranquility of East Hampton. The affluent area includes a mansion owned by a wealthy man, located just a short walk from the beach. The shocking news spread rapidly through the local media due to the involvement of a wealthy victim and the gruesome nature of the crime. Ted Ammon was a wealthy man who had achieved success through his intelligence and hard work. Despite his wealth, he remained humble. Ted grew up in a middle-class family in a small town. After graduating from high school, he attended college, where he studied economics and also played on the varsity lacrosse team. From an early age, Ted stood out as a strong, attractive, and energetic individual. Although he appeared to be an ordinary young man from the countryside, his exceptional abilities set him apart. Ted demonstrated remarkable intelligence and excelled in his studies, which helped him secure a prestigious job in the early 1980s. Ted was involved in buying out companies using borrowed funds, which gradually allowed him to become one of the best in his field. He was recognized for his impressive financial accomplishments and the wealth he accumulated. Although easy to talk to, he never flaunted his money or opportunities. Instead, he quietly focused on performing his work better than anyone else. Ted divorced in 1983 and needed a new apartment. He scheduled a meeting with a staff estate agent named Jean Rosa. However, due to his busy schedule, Ted missed the appointment. People who knew Ted were accustomed to his hectic life and understood his absence. Nevertheless, Jean Rosa was upset and called Ted to express her frustration. During their conversation, Ted found Jean Rosa quite attractive. He asked her out on a date, marking the beginning of their relationship. The romance lasted 3 years, and the couple decided to marry in 1986. Initially, their relationship was passionate, but over time, it gradually cooled. That same year, Ted became involved with a large company and executed a deal using borrowed funds amounting to $26 billion, which allowed him to secure a substantial profit, part of which went to him. By 1992, Ted, having gained valuable experience, decided to start his own business using this initial capital. This marked the start of his journey toward financial success. As Ted's wealth grew, he began acquiring more luxury real estate, not only in the United States. His first real estate purchase was a high-end estate in the Midwest, followed by a house in Manhattan. He also purchased a villa in Surrey. Ted was very generous and actively engaged in charitable work. Over his life, he donated approximately $1.15 million to his alma mater and later established his own charity to support children. Jean Rosa was drawn to the luxurious lifestyle, which was completely unlike anything she had known in her early life. She knew little about her father, only that he had been an Italian sailor. Her mother had traveled to Italy, where she had an affair with the sailor, resulting in Generosa's birth. When she was just 10 years old, her mother died of cancer, and her father never appeared in her life, forcing her to live with foster families. This was a difficult period filled with fear and despair that Jean Rosa preferred not to recall. Now, she experienced a new world of wealth and luxury. Her husband purchased a lavish mansion in the prestigious East Hampton village. Styled like an English manor, the house featured 6 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. The mansion featured numerous luxurious amenities, including a solarium, gym, library, and a heated pool, along with a guest house, all situated on a 90-acre estate that included its own pond. Jean Rosa remained connected to her roots and, like her husband, valued her past. She dedicated herself to helping others and chose to adopt 2 11-year-old twins after she and her husband were unable to have biological children. Jean Rosa felt a strong desire to improve the lives of children facing hardships, similar to those she had experienced. The couple named their children Alexa and Gregory. Initially, everything appeared to be going well, but after a few years, Generosa's behavior began to change. Her first sign was cutting off contact with friends without explanation and acting as though she had been wronged, which she used to justify her actions. Her behavior became increasingly unpredictable, and she often became angry over trivial matters. On one occasion, a wealthy client had 600 tulips planted at their home, but Jean Rosa had them removed, claiming the colors were not what she expected. Unfortunately, much of her anger was directed at her husband, placing considerable strain on their once strong relationship. In an effort to repair their marriage, the couple decided to move to England to start anew. However, Ted soon had to return home for work. Jean Rosa began to suspect that her husband, Ted, was having an affair with a co-worker. To investigate her concerns, she took their children and moved back to the United States, settling in a townhouse in New York. In 1999, to confirm her suspicions, Jean Rosa hired a private detective who verified that Ted had a young mistress. This revelation led to the deterioration of their marriage. Additionally, Jean Rosa worried that Ted was not only cheating, but also attempting to hide some of their shared assets from her. She believed that Ted's wealth amounted to at least $1.3 million, although this was never verified. Lawyers spent significant time determining Ted's actual net worth, which was ultimately calculated at $1.8 million. Jean Rosa planned to claim half of this amount in the divorce. Jean Rosa and her children then moved into a luxury hotel while she began renovating their home, which was expected to cost about $1.9 million. To fund the purchase of materials and start the work, Jean Rosa borrowed $1.3 million. All expenses for the hotel, renovations, and loan were covered by Ted. Meanwhile, in central Long Island, a man named Daniel Pelosi learned from a friend that a wealthy woman was spending millions of dollars renovating her house. At the time, Daniel was an unlicensed electrician with a wife and 3 children. His family life was quite difficult. Despite financial struggles, Daniel remained optimistic and hoped to secure a good job in Manhattan to support his family. His circumstances changed when Jean Rosa noticed him and hired him to perform renovations on her home. They soon began a romantic relationship, giving Daniel access to both Generosa's bedroom and her wealth. The story of a wealthy woman falling for a man like Daniel attracted public attention, especially since Daniel was eager to flaunt the relationship, boasting about it almost everywhere. The news reached Ted, who decided to pursue a divorce. The marriage was over, and lawyers continued working to divide assets and resolve other disputes. Daniel and Jean Rosa shared similar backgrounds, both having grown up in poverty, which fostered empathy and deepened their relationship. Jean Rosa told Daniel that her husband was a traitor, fueling her anger. In search of comfort, she chose to pursue a relationship with Daniel. However, the renovation of her house became increasingly complicated and costly, consuming a large sum of money, including Ted's savings. Meanwhile, Daniel stayed with her and enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. Daniel's new lifestyle began to negatively affect his family. He developed an alcohol problem, which led to several drunk driving incidents. Daniel lived extravagantly, generously tipping $100 at restaurants and spending thousands of dollars on nights out with friends. He described his relationship with Jean Rosa as a blessing. By the summer of 2001, Daniel had completely replaced Ted in Jean Rosa's life. Although the divorce was still pending, Daniel lived with her in the East Hampton mansion and drove Ted's luxury cars. On October 20, 2001, Ted's lawyers finalized a deal to divide his assets. After settling debts, repair costs, and taxes, Ted was left with $1.46 million, half of which would go to Jean Rosa after their divorce. By then, however, the money no longer seemed sufficient for her needs. After the divorce, Ted's friends and family noticed that he appeared happier. That Saturday, Ted drove his luxury car to a restaurant for dinner, then took a walk on the beach while speaking on the phone with his new girlfriend. He returned to his East Hampton mansion late that evening. The following Monday, Ted was scheduled to attend an important meeting at work, but he did not show up, which was uncharacteristic of him. He also failed to arrange for anyone to pick up his children from school, raising concerns among those who knew him. His secretary attempted to contact him multiple times, but received no response. Worried, a business partner hired a helicopter to fly to Ted's mansion. Upon arrival, they found Ted's 3 dogs barking loudly in the backyard, but no one answered their calls. The garage door was open, and the house alarm was off. They entered and noticed that the door was unlocked. The partner and the secretary searched the first floor, but could not locate Ted. They called out his name, but there was still no answer. As their concern increased, they decided to contact the police. Eventually, Ted was found in the bedroom, lying lifeless in a pool of blood. Nearby, a large amount of cash was present, suggesting that robbery was not the motive. During the autopsy, forensic experts determined that Ted had suffered at least 8 blows to the head from a blunt object, likely a bat, causing severe injuries and fatal bleeding. The evidence pointed to a brutal murder. When Ted arrived home that Saturday night, it was clear that he had been attacked. The perpetrator intended to ensure that Ted had no chance of survival. Ted's first wife then contacted the police. Although their marriage had ended approximately 20 years earlier, they had remained friends and were in regular contact. She reached out to share disturbing information. Just 2 days before his death, Ted had met with her. During that meeting, they discussed the ongoing divorce proceedings. However, Ted believed that their problems extended beyond the divorce. He felt tension and hostility in their relationship, and even joked that Jean Rosa would not calm down until he was dead. The police, hearing this account, were puzzled because Jean Rosa seemed too weak to confront Ted, who was stronger and larger than her boyfriend, Daniel. This raised the possibility that they might have been working together. Police focused on Jean Rosa and Daniel as primary suspects, but they found no evidence linking them to the crime scene. The murder weapon was missing, along with any fingerprints or other traces. Forensic experts worked diligently for weeks, but their efforts produced no results. In mid-November 2001, the lawyers opened the will. According to the will, Jean Rosa would have been disinherited upon Ted's death. However, the will had been newly drafted, and Ted had not yet signed it. As a result, Jenny received half of Ted's estate, while the other half was transferred to a charitable organization. This situation provided a strong motive for the murder, as Jean Rosa and Daniel believed it would be better to become an extremely wealthy widow than to receive nothing. The police wanted to question Jean Rosa and Daniel, but they refused to cooperate. The couple isolated themselves in a villa, avoided all interaction, and hired highly skilled lawyers. The media extensively covered the events. Although their lawyers advised them to stay away from journalists, the couple chose to ignore this advice. Daniel quickly divorced his wife and married Jean Rosa just 1 day later. Instead of appearing upset over her husband's death, she seemed remarkably at ease with the circumstances. Ted's murder, reported across newspapers and television stations, attracted national attention. Daniel and Generosa's lawyers were criticized for their extensive efforts to shield the couple from the investigation and trial. During this time, Daniel and his children moved into another mansion owned by Jean Rosa. Soon, they began spending extravagantly, thousands of dollars each day, thoughtlessly squandering money that Ted had accumulated over decades of hard work. Unfortunately, this lavish lifestyle lasted less than a month, as Daniel had to return to Long Island to stand trial for drunk driving. Police suspected that Daniel might attempt to flee the country, so they were cautious. For several days, he remained outspoken and seemed to enjoy the media attention, even though it was connected to serious allegations. He was far from discreet. Jean Rosa moved in with him at their East Hampton home, where neighbors observed loud behavior and frequent drinking. Jean Rosa was often seen intoxicated and acting inappropriately, making the couple a source of shame for the local elite community. The situation worsened further. By May 2002, Jean Rosa experienced frequent fainting spells, and by June, she was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. Meanwhile, Daniel pleaded guilty to drunk driving and received a 1-year prison sentence. He was released in June 2003, hoping that the Ted case had quieted down, but the investigation remained active and continued to attract media attention. Although no direct evidence linked Daniel or Jean Rosa to the crimes, circumstantial evidence suggested their involvement. Jean Rosa and Daniel had secretly installed video surveillance cameras in the mansion to monitor Ted. The cameras were intended to record the moment of the attack, but it was discovered that the hard drive had been erased. This proved to be a crucial clue, as only the two of them knew about the cameras, adding to the circumstantial case against them. Meanwhile, Generosa's health deteriorated as she battled cancer. Realizing her time was limited, she created a will assigning her assets to her late husband's children and a charitable foundation. She also allocated $2 million to her husband to cover his legal costs. In July 2003, Jean Rosa and her children moved to another mansion, wanting to spend her final days with loved ones. Just a month later, she passed away from her illness, leaving the children orphaned for the second time. This sparked a custody battle between their nanny and Ted's sister over the twins. For a period, the twins were separated. Gregory went to boarding school, while Alexa stayed in East Hampton with the nanny. Eventually, Ted's sister won custody, and both children were relocated to Huntsville, Alabama. Daniel was thrust into the public spotlight when he was charged with the murder of Ted Ammon. The district attorney's office claimed that he had a motive for the crime and presented evidence they believed was strong enough to convince a jury. When the trial began, Daniel's lawyers prepared extensively. With financial backing from Jean Rosa, he was able to hire top experts. The police spent 9 months interviewing witnesses, all members of Daniel's inner circle, and these witnesses helped the police gather incriminating evidence against him. Approximately a year before Ted's death, Daniel had made suspicious comments, stating he would do anything to get money from Jean Rosa, even if it meant committing murder. Daniel squandered all the money Jean Rosa had given him to support his lavish lifestyle. After the murder, he boasted to some friends that he had killed Ted, excitedly recounting that Ted had begged for his life and even cried, yet Daniel had shown no mercy. This story was later repeated by others, and he continued to brag about it for several days. The prosecution faced challenges with Daniel's alibi. On the night of the murder, his sister, who lived 60 kilometers away from the mansion, initially confirmed that he was with her. However, after further questioning by the police, she provided new information. She stated that Daniel and a friend had actually arrived at her home around 10 p.m., retrieved something from the attic, and left around 2 a.m., returning only at 8 a.m. This revelation exposed inconsistencies in his alibi, suggesting he had enough time to travel to East Hampton and back after killing Ted. Daniel's sister recalled hugging him before he left that night and noticing something unusual about his leather jacket. He then stopped answering her questions and suddenly left. It is believed that he stopped by his sister's house to retrieve the murder weapon. Daniel then drove 45 minutes to Ted's house, entered, and waited for Ted to arrive. The attack was sudden. While Ted was unconscious, Daniel struck him multiple times in the head, fracturing his skull and leaving him no chance of survival. The next morning, Daniel returned to his sister's house, where she was awake and able to provide details about the timing of the incident. This information was crucial to the prosecution, casting doubt on Daniel's alibi. Daniel's father reported that the day after the incident, he had a strange conversation with Daniel, during which Daniel seemed to ask leading questions about how to hide an object so that it would never be discovered. The father, not fully understanding the situation, suggested sending the object to be recycled and offered several other ideas, unknowingly helping a criminal dispose of a murder weapon. The prosecutor's office had gathered enough evidence and circumstantial information, so the police decided to question Daniel one final time just days before filing charges, hoping to obtain a confession by offering a deal. On March 23, 2004, Daniel still had not confessed to the crime. Nearly 2.5 years after the murder, the media and public were awaiting updates, but no major news had emerged. Daniel was charged with second-degree murder, which carried a sentence of up to 25 years. On the day of the trial, the prosecution introduced 2 new witnesses who had been in custody with Daniel after the attack. Prior to the hearing, the prosecution used these witnesses to obtain audio recordings of Daniel's testimony. In these recordings, Daniel described violently attacking Ted with a baseball bat, intending to break all the bones in Ted's body. During the trial, Daniel's defense attorney claimed that Ted was promiscuous, stating he was dating multiple women simultaneously. The attorney intended to suggest that this lifestyle could lead to multiple potential suspects, implying that anyone might have had a reason to harm Ted. Daniel unexpectedly chose to testify in his own defense, leading to a tense 5-hour standoff with the prosecutor. The situation drew significant media attention, increasing the pressure. The defense attorneys attempted to place blame on Jean Rosa. Daniel admitted that Jean Rosa had offered to kill Ted, but he refused. This defense strategy was meant to cast doubt on the jury by implying that Jean Rosa could have been the actual perpetrator. However, it remained difficult to determine Jean Rosa's involvement and her true role in the violent crime. The truth may never be known, as her secret died with her. 2 years after Ted's death, the jury deliberated throughout the entire weekend and finally returned a guilty verdict. Daniel Pelosi broke down in tears and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He continues to deny any involvement in the murder, maintaining his innocence. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.